afternoon. My name is Dianne Butler. I'm the career counselor here at Pulaski Tech, and my office is upstairs on the third floor in room 318. Today we will be talking about It's All About You, job readiness. We will focus on resume writing. So why do you think I call this workshop It's All About You? Why do you think I entitled it that way?
Because your resume is all about you.
Thank you. That's a very good answer. It is. It is all about you. It's a very personal thing that you're about to engage in. How you present yourself to an employer, your talents, your skills. It is all about you. And the other reason is it should exude some excitement, some enthusiasm. Because again, it's you presenting yourself to an employer, offering your talents. And if you can't get excited about it, who can? So it's all about you. Let's get excited. So my question today is, are you worth the effort? Do you think you're worth the effort? It does take time and some effort. I think you are. But it's a decision you have to make. Now sometimes action speaks louder than words. So, and I've been listening to you, and I know that you're already engaged. You're here today, so that tells me that you are engaged and trying to do things for yourself. And that's great. But we do have to stay on top of things. We have to know what's going on, where our resources are. So let's make an effort in this regard. So again, it's up to you. You make the decision. All right. And while I'm here, I'd just like to plug some things going on in career services. So we have a job fair that will be happening on April 3rd. It will be downstairs in the Grand Hall and in the foyer area down there. It will be from 9 to 1 on April 3rd. There will be about 40 or so employers here offering full-time, part-time, and internships. So please make a point to come in. Now sometimes students think, I'm not interested in working, so I'm not going to, engage in the job fair. But you need to think about the future. There are more things going on than just jobs, getting a job right now. What you're doing is networking and making contacts that you possibly could use in the future. So it's a good opportunity to practice those skills that you will need in the future. College Central Network is a new feature that we have at the college that allows you to upload your resume to the system. Employers can see your resume. You can see the jobs that employers are posting. There's all kinds of tutorials in that, so it's very neat. And as I mentioned earlier, you'll be able to receive alerts and announcements through that system as well. So please take advantage of all of those opportunities. So when you get to the job fair, the first thing you need to do is learn how to present yourself. Now, how many of you, this is the elevator speech, how many of you are comfortable walking up to a stranger and introducing yourself? So you want to be able to introduce yourself, and this is something that you want to practice because you do want to be timely with it because they're trying to get to every person they can. Yeah. So be timely with your introductions and be courteous. Okay. A recruiter will have a table there. They'll have pens, maybe candy, all kinds of little goodies. How many students do you think come by and that's all they want? They're not interested in the company. Mm-hmm. They don't care what this person has to say. They just want what's on their table. They grab it and go. How would you like someone to come knock on your front door? And you say, hello, come in. And they go straight to your refrigerator. Start helping themselves.
I get you now.
That's the same way a recruiter will feel when you walk up to their table and you start helping yourself. It's for you. They brought it for you. So they don't care that you take it. But it's just the thing. Come up and be interested in them as a person and then what they have to offer you. So be courteous when you encounter them and listen. You ask a question, now listen to what they have to say. Okay? That's going to win you points whether you're looking for a job right now or not. Okay. Now before we sit down to write our resume, we have to do a little prep work. And I call it pre-worksheets, okay? Pre-resume worksheets. You can keep a file electronically or on hard copy, whatever you prefer. But you're going to, these areas that's listed here are going to be pages within your file. So these are things that you're going to keep and you're going to update. This will be very useful to you when you sit down to write your resume because your resume should be targeted toward a particular objective. Therefore, you're not going to use everything in your life experience, but that file is going to help you go straight to what you want to highlight on the resume. So that would also, the file also helps you to keep from forgetting things. We tend to forget things that we've done, experiences that we had. I wish I had a record of every training and workshop I've ever attended. That is such a valuable tool. So I encourage you today to start doing that. Keep that record. For instance, education. That's going to change. Every semester you're adding something to this. So just keep your file updated. So there should be a page for education, work experience, community service, volunteer service, extracurricular activity, awards, honors, skills, personality, character traits, unique features. Unique features, and and those are things that set you apart from other people. So to start recording that.
It look bad if you don't have like volunteer or community.
It's not a required thing, but it definitely helps you, especially if you're going to be a little short on the experience side. If you don't have a lot of work experience, then volunteering and being involved in extracurricular activities is going to help you gain some of those things. Now, what kind of things do we learn from extracurricular activities? What can we gain from being involved in teamwork, leadership, cooperation, planning, people skills, implementing plans and programs, and your networking. So you gain a lot of things from being involved in extracurricular activities, engaging in volunteer service and community service. You're also gaining references, people who will, can write letters for you, who can be a testament to your work ethic and other things. So it's very good to have. You don't have to have it, but it certainly is a plus on your resume. All right. So the 3 R's of writing your resume is research. You need to know who we are. That Cooter handout that you have today, that's going to help you understand about your skills, your values, and your interests. As I said earlier, it's going to help you do deciding a major, planning your career. So that's very important that you do the Cooter career assessment. And you may even be sure of what you're doing, but the Cooter will help confirm that you're going in the right direction. All right, so we're going to research ourselves. The Cooter's going to help do that. We need to know who we are. I think that is so important in anything that you engage in. Knowing who you are, number one, this starts everything, okay?
Right.
And then the next step, the company. Is this company in line, their philosophy in line with my philosophy of life? Am I going to be happy working with this company?
So true.
Yes, I need to research. Now, how do we research companies? How do we find out what they're about? Internet? Sure. They have a website probably. Chamber of Commerce. What about people that work there? Yeah, word of mouth. And now be careful about how you take that information in, because sometimes people might have a little thing going on and may not, be upfront, or you may not understand where they're coming from. So be careful about those kinds of things. But that's a good insight. So you have to consider everything that you get from it. And then also the position. Am I truly qualified for this position? Why am I seeking this particular position? What can I bring to this company? And what can I gain from this company? The 3 R's. Okay? Now, so we know that a resume is, everybody knows what a resume is, right? It's a document that talks about your past work history, all of your achievements up to this point as it relates to work and you getting future employment. Okay? So what we know about it is that it is a living document. It is living, it's breathing. So does it stay the same? No. It grows. As you grow, it will grow. So, for instance, your education piece, it's going to grow every semester because you're continuing to add things to your resume, to your education. Okay? It's a marketing tool. It sells you on paper. That's why it's so personal. It gets you an interview, and that's the purpose of the resume, is to move you closer to that job with an interview. It must be truthful. You have to tell the truth. It highlights your achievement, and in my opinion, should be tailored to an objective. An objective is an optional piece to a resume, but to me, when there's an objective, it's so much clearer for that employer to know exactly what you're interested in, what you want. And also, an objective helps you to tailor the body of the resume so that it supports the resume. Now, an objective should be very concise, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, but just very concise. Sometimes you read an objective that's very flowery about what people want and all of that. We need to avoid that. We want to get right to the point, very specific when we add an objective. Okay. Now, just some basic rules for your resume. 1 page, no more than 2. If you have 2 pages, you have got to have a lot of good stuff in there. It's got to be packed full of strong supporting evidence for why you qualify for this position. But let's try to keep it to 1 page. Standard size paper, it must be typed. White or ivory colored paper is best. 12-point font size. And let's use quality resume paper. Myself, I would not care. However, if the feel of a nicer paper makes the difference between you and another candidate, I would go with the nicer paper. So put forth the effort. Again, are you worth it? So let's put forth the effort and get the nice resume paper. Absolutely has to be free of spelling and grammar errors. Absolutely must. Now, you want someone to prove it for you over and over again. More than just once. Get a couple of eyes, maybe 3 sets of eyes to look at it, and because spell check doesn't catch everything, right?
True.
Okay. So this is an absolute must. Spelling and grammar errors. That 1 point alone can get it thrown out. If an employer is looking at 100 resumes and there's a glaring mistake right there, you get to read your qualifications. Okay. Now, some commonly used formats. We have chronological and functional. These are the most commonly used formats that are out there today. And the chronological is usually used by someone who's been in the field for a long time, and you're staying in that field, and you have a lot of background, a lot of work history to support the job or the career or the field that you're going into. So that's generally when that's used. And the chronological will list the history from starting point, working backwards. And you want to add about 10 years, depending on what comes first, back to your first job, or at least 10 years. The functional is one that I find students, is best for students because they're entering a new field after gaining education or credentials or degrees, and now I'm entering a field that I may not have never worked in before. And so the functional is going to relate to your skills. The function is just what you want to emphasize in the functional. So I would do that. So as it says, it's best when you're seeking employment in a new field or your first job. It emphasizes skills and capabilities rather than your work history. And when random or inconsistent work history may be present. For instance, students may work a job here, they make work two or three jobs at a time, so it's sort of random pattern. When you have that kind of history, then you may want to go with the functional. Okay? And when there are barriers to employment, such as age, whereas you're not, so the chronology is going to really highlight dates. So if you want to sort of avoid the age issue until you get to the interview, you've sold yourself, so that's one hurdle. But you don't want them to say, oh, my, don't want that person. So the functional might be the best choice. All right. So now we're ready to prepare for action. So when we get started on that resume, we must use some action verbs. Things that are going to be descriptive, but describe things that show how we have accomplished certain things on our job. So action verbs. And you can Google this and get all kinds of help with this. Okay, know what the employer wants. Communication skills. That's probably number 1. You need to be able to write, speak, listen, These are communication skills that are valuable. So learn to do this. As you are going through your classes, don't think about this class just as a grade I am making, but what I can gain out of this that's going to help me in the future. So when you take speech communication, public speaking is going to be critical. You know, when you're in that computer concepts class, learn PowerPoint because you will be doing presentations, communicating, writing effectively. Learn all that you can and think about it in a way that I'm going to need this for the career. So the better you are at that, the better off you'll be. Communication is number one. Good work ethic. Are you there on time? Do you do the job when you were there? Do you cooperate with others? Are you always causing drama, havoc in the office? Think about this. What's your work ethic? Do you stay until the job is done? Are you one of those that says, not in my job description? Work ethic, very important. Team player, cooperate. You cooperate with others. You join in, you pitch in, even though it may not be your assignment. You're a team player. You're about the good of the team. What is the overall mission? You support that. Initiative. I don't have to be told to do things. I take the initiative. I'm eager to advance a project or whatever, and I'm always thinking about how we can make things better. So you show initiative. Analytical skills, computer and technical skills, flexibility, adaptability. Can I go with the flow, or am I very rigid and don't like changes? Interpersonal skills, get along with people. You know, that's the number one thing, reason people get fired from jobs. So they don't get along. And an employer doesn't care how good you are at your job. If you're creating chaos in that setting, you're reducing the productivity of the office or the workplace. They're just not going to tolerate that. Problem-solving skills. Are you a problem-solver? That's what they want, people who can do that. Okay, so now the main components of a resume. We have personal data, experience, education, and work history. So when you type in your personal data, your name is going to be enhanced. So it could be bold, a little larger than the rest of the resume. Okay, so you enhance it. And your personal data should be professional. And then, of course, your experience, education, and work history. Now, what comes next is determined by the employer. And one way to figure out whether experience comes first or education comes first, a clue would be in the job description. You could read that job description and determine what that employer is most interested in. Are they most interested in a person who has a certain degree in the field? Is that a requirement? Or is a certain amount of time spent on the job most important? So then you would select the one that company or that employer is most interested in. Now here's some optional features, the objective. You don't have to have one, but I definitely love to see it. I love it because, again, I can build a solid foundation with an objective. Once I have an objective, then I know what is required to be competent in those areas. So I decide what areas would qualify me under that particular objective, and then underneath those headings, I simply put supporting documents, not documents, but supporting statements about how I'm competent in each area. So the objective really is a guide for me, but again, it is an optional piece. Highlights and qualifications, list of coursework and references are optional. If you list coursework, I would only when that course is relevant to a position. For instance, if you're going after a bookkeeping position, if you're applying for a bookkeeping position, then accounting 1 and 2 may be a good class, especially if you made an A in it. Would be a good class to list on there. And then if you don't have a lot of information to put on your resume, that can be used as a filler. So here we go. Personal. We talked about what goes in there already. The objective should be a clear one, no more than 2 sentence statements, and it should be very concise. Seeking a position as bookkeeper with ABC Company. Very specific. I don't want to see, I want to fulfill my goal and mission in life by blah, 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 blah. That's too much. Very specific. An employee wants to get right to it. I need to know what you want to do. And that's your hook. That's your hook as well. Read that job description and know exactly what they're looking for. Reword your objective so that when they read it, it's saying, oh, wow, that person wants to do exactly what I need to have done. So that's your hook. Now I'm supporting my objective with everything else in my resume. So highlights of qualifications. So here we go. We may talk about being proficient in Excel or Access or Microsoft Suite. This is where you could put some information like that. You don't necessarily put a date that you took the class or anything, but you can just make a statement that you're proficient in that area. And then other things, what might enhance so many years of volunteer or community service could go there. So other things that would enhance. Then your experience, depending on what that employee wants to see, education first or experience first. You would have a section on that. So what I'm showing you here are just the sections. This is what your resume should look like without the boxes. Okay? So just, eliminate the box, but that's the order in which you should be going. Should be lined up something like that. Now you can say references available upon request if you want. It's not necessarily to say it at all. However, if you say that, when you get that interview and you go to the interview, be sure you have a separate sheet of references with you. Okay. Now some common mistakes that people make. So email is not professional. The name is a nickname, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so, and that goes, when you have references, be sure you let them know that someone may be calling you and that my real name is, don't forget. Now you remember Uncle Joe, but you wouldn't be using Uncle, hopefully it's your reference. But remember that Pookie is not my real name. So they're going to be calling and asking about Bob Smith, okay? So don't say, who is Bob Smith? I don't know Bob Smith. So be sure you let your references know that. And what about distasteful messages and postings on answer machines and social media? So you have to be careful about that because employers are now looking at social media and they are seeing what this person is like. So if you put things out there, it stays out there forever. So be careful what you post. But you want everything to be professional. You're looking for a professional job. We're in college because one day we're going to be professionals on a professional career path. So we want to do everything, and we start right now with doing these things. And what about answering machines that have this long song and distasteful songs? I've had to listen to those just to return calls sometimes. If I've got 2 people here, 3 people that I'm seriously interested in, and I get this phone message that's very distasteful, because my taste is not your taste in music, okay? So if I got to listen to all of this, what am I going to do? I'm busy.
Yeah.
That's it. All right, so what would a disconnected phone number suggest about you? So maybe that would suggest you're not reliable, but now some legitimate things could be happening. But our first thing is that they're not paying bills, they're not reliable, they're not responsible. So how will we handle? Let's say we're moving, in the process of moving. Or maybe we really did get disconnected because we didn't pay the bill.
I would call and give them another number they can contact me.
Exactly. Right. Call, and then what that also does is put you on their minds again, okay? I submitted a resume last week, and since that time, my number's changed, and this is my new contact number. Just do it just do that, and that will avoid any of that. So it's very important to make sure your contact information is current. Failing to capitalize on transferable skills is another common mistake. Often students will work part-time jobs here or there, maybe at JCPenney's or McDonald's, and you don't think that that's really as professional as the career that you're going to start once you get your degree. But you never discount any employment opportunity that you have. Never discount. Always look for the things within that. Basically what it boils down to is knowing the language, how to transfer it from one thing to the other. So let's say I'm working at McDonald's, and when new hires come in, I get to train them. Okay, does that transfer?
Yeah.
I'm training. Perhaps on the evening shift, I get to supervise. Or maybe I have the responsibility of closing, the store, or some other, responsibilities. Do I resolve conflict? Another word for mediation. So, do I provide customer service? So these are things you think about. Yes, it's a McDonald's job. And of course, you can think about going up the ladder at McDonald's, which would be a good thing. But yes, it's a job in fast food. But there are things that was I there every day? Did I show good work ethic? Was I able to get along with other people? So there are things that you learn in any job that you can transfer. So failing to capitalize on those kinds of things is a common mistake. So don't do that. So here's our checklist just for our resume. So we want to make sure that your name is what? Bold and 2 points larger than the rest of your text, right, on your resume. So check that off. Contact information is professional and current. Your resume is 1 page in length. Your formatting is consistent. For instance, the font size for your headings would be the same. Your spacing, all of that should be consistent. Your verb tense is present for your current job. It's past for previous jobs. Adequate bullet points to support accomplishments, your skills, etc. All major components represented: education, work history, skills, experience. Major accomplishments are highlighted. Your key skills are demonstrated. And that you've listed your major, expected graduation date, and GPA, if it is above a 3.0 on the education section. Don't forget that when you submit a resume that you do need to include a cover letter, references, and follow-up letter. A follow-up letter is simply a thank you letter. So a cover letter must accompany your resume. It should be formatted on the same size paper and type as the resume. And it indicates the reason why you are applying or submitting your resume. It should contain specific career objectives, highlight major qualifications that relate to the position, direct the reader to specific contents in your resume. In other words, you're going to allude to something that's on that resume when you write that cover letter. And it's going to list phone numbers where you can be contacted. It should not be negative or apologetic. It should not be too wordy, and it should not have too many sentences starting with I. So let me see if I can read this quickly. Dear Mr. Spankillo, while researching information at the Career Services Office at Pulaski Technical College, I read a letter you recently sent describing Simply Fab's marketing department. Upon graduation from Pulaski Technical College this May, I would like to begin a career in sales and marketing with your organization. So what has happened here is Ann has said how she heard about it, how she heard about this company. That's the first thing. You tell them how you heard about it and why you are writing. I graduated school in May, and I would like an opportunity with your company. Now allude to the resume. You will note from the enclosed resume that many of my extracurricular and work experiences involve the organization and promotion of events. So here's some things about me. And she goes on to say more things about why she's qualified for this position in that second paragraph. Now the third paragraph is alluding to something that goes past this letter, the resume. allude to getting an interview or having a face-to-face. So Ann says, a letter and resume can tell you only so much about my motivation and qualifications. I would welcome the opportunity to discuss my background with you in person and would travel to Dallas at my own expense to do so. I will call you at the end of the next week to discuss whether such a meeting would be possible and to confirm appropriate next steps. So she's alluding to what's going to happen. So that's a good cover letter. Okay. So don't forget the follow-up again, which is a simple thank you. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. And then your references, these are other documents that go along with your resume. So cover letter, I'm sorry, not with the resume. The references will not be with the resume, but at the interview. Your thank you note comes after the interview. After the interview, okay? This is a sample of what a reference would look like. You would typically have about 3 to 5 references. The references, the guidelines for that would include contact information and title of the individual, a list on your page separate from your resume. State on your resume that the references are available on request if you choose, that's optional. Contact your references and get their permission before you give their names out. And select references that are most appropriate for the job you're applying for. For instance, if you happen to know someone who worked in that company before, maybe retired from that company or has some experience, good experience with that company, then that would be an excellent person to use. Or someone that's well known in the community would be a good reference. Thank you. Simply a simple card after or note after the interview is great. If you were interviewed by a team of people, make sure you address one to each member of that interview team. Even a note back to the secretary is good. You never know who has input on the selection when it all gets down to it. That secretary that you may think can really blow it depending on your attitude. So when you walk into that setting, you want to be very pleasant to that secretary. Okay. Express appreciation for the time that was given. State your requirements, the requirements that you heard. Reiterate your qualifications and why that you're still interested in the position. And I read something just the other day about during the interview, when you are asking questions, to ask something about a problem or a challenge that the previous person had in the job, or that a person taking this job might have. And depending on what that manager says, if you can go back and think of something that might suggest a resolution to that problem, and when you email them the little thank you card, you can say, by the way, I was thinking about that situation you mentioned, and have you thought to try this? That doesn't mean that it has to work, that it has to be brilliant, but just that you were thinking about something. So it's sort of forward thinking. I thought about, I was thinking about what you said, and have you ever thought about handling it this way? So that might be a good something to put in a thank you card. But it's just a simple note, and it indicates that you're appreciative of what others have to say. And actually, this worked for me. One time I interviewed for a position at ULR and did not get that position, but I called back. I sent a card and I called back and just thanked them and asked, too, for feedback on my performance during the interview. And because of that, he said, well, it wasn't this or that. You were good. You were great. It was just this other person. And I said, well, fine, okay. I'll try to, glean and grow from this. And he then said, there's a position coming up in a counterpart in another office close by. I'm going to give them your information. Got that job. So, that's the way it works sometimes. So just be sure you follow up and you be thankful for the time that people give you. Okay, so now it's time to celebrate, and we go on to the interview from here. Thank you for being here.